We've developed an AI adaptive assessment engine that allows us to assess people's speaking ability as well as other skills.
All employees have to keep their cameras on during work hours to make this feature possible.
Generally, the market has less confidence in the kind of longevity or the success of the data for AI market.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Slater Pod. Hi there, Esther.
Hi, Florian.
So today our guest is Brigham Tomko, the CEO of Immersion, a SaaS language education technology company. So very different today, very different talk. We
Yeah.
recorded this yesterday. So this is very, very interesting. It's around language learning, not localization, but language learning. So very interesting talk. Don't miss that. First, of course, it's been a sad week, and I would just like to express our solidarity with the people of Ukraine and our language industry colleagues in Ukraine. This is a terrible tragedy, and our thoughts are with everyone who's affected there by the war. Of course, there's many ways to help, and I hope everyone's taking the opportunity to help. But we just like to point out that our friends at Clear Global, formerly Translators Without Borders, we
Yeah.
had Andrew Braden came on the podcast. So they're now right now scaling up their operations to help those fleeing the war. On their website, they're saying we need your support to scale up our work now and help all those fleeing the war in Ukraine to get the information they're looking for and communicate their needs in a language they understand. That includes speakers of Ukraine's 20 minority languages. Ukraine is a huge country, it's 40 million people, and students and residents of other nationalities that are caught up in a conflict. So head over to clearglobal.org/donate. And, if that's something we can do. It's as tragic as things are. It's hard to find the right words. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? We continue, of course, to cover the news in the language industry. We're also going to cover some news coming out of the data for AI industry, which seems to have had a bit of a rough week. And you're going to tell us more about that from the Appen side. We'll also talk about our job index. But first, another company that's doing data for AI, Flitto. Do you remember Flitto?
Yes, I do.
So we picked up on a story where it says Flitto CEO shares insights on metaverse platform. This was published by the Korea Herald. And, they talk about Flitto. It's a company that started in 2012, so 10 years old. They say it's a translation platform that collects language data in the form of text, audio, and images and offers users translations done by AI. That's basically just a kind of nutshell pitch that the Korea Herald gave for that company. But what was interesting and kind of dystopian, frankly, was when they talked about what they mean by working in the metaverse. So let me just read that off here. So the CEO spoke at a conference. I think it was arranged by, I don't know. I think the French embassy or something, some kind of event. Somebody fact check me on that. But basically, they say that from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., they have around 140 people, Flitto that is, work on this metaverse platform. They can choose, of course, to also work at the office in person. But again, a lot of people are choosing to work on that, whatever, online, remote metaverse platform. So then they describe what that means. And it says like his avatar, meaning like the CEO's avatar, which was wearing a blue dress, walked up to the office building, passes the security gate and gets on the elevator up to Flitto's office, just like he would going to work in real life.
Yeah.
Now, he's coming. Now get ready for a few kickers.
Okay.
When his avatar walks up to another avatar in the office, a pop-up window of a video call with that person appears on the screen, allowing them to have a face-to-face conversation. And now the absolute kicker, Lee said all employees have to keep their cameras on during work hours to make this feature possible.
Not up for that.
When they leave the desk for more than 30 minutes during work hours, our HR team receives a notice that the employees have been away from their keyboards.
HR. Okay.
Yeah, not sure about that. So we're gonna write a feature around this and just kind of collect some thoughts and feedbacks.
It's definitely interesting. I mean, it's kind of taking, the sort of idea of remote work or hybrid working to the next level. But yeah.
Absolutely. The question though is, I mean, okay, if you're sitting in an office,
Yeah.
in a sense, like, okay, there's other people like technically being able to watch you, but like it's not like you have a camera
Yeah.
pointed at you at all times, and any second somebody could just pop up and like connect and like see what you're
Yeah,
doing.
it's quite intrusive. I suppose in the office you do have the possibility of people walking up to your desk at any point.
Yeah, but then you see that person approaching,
Yeah, that's true.
and it's not like instant. And by the way, I mean, and you are at home. It just feels like, yeah, it feels like super intrusive to me personally. I don't know. I'd like to know when my webcam's on. I mean, and if it's always on,
Ideally, yeah.
that's just super weird. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, and we're gonna talk about it in an article in a couple of weeks from now. I think we really want to understand if that's a particular phenomenon to this probably
Mm.
relatively tech forward company. If there's even other LSPs who are many of them are like nearly 100% remote. If that's something that other companies will consider too. Now, I don't know if Flitz's business is doing well, but another company that's also in the data for AI space, Appen, their business isn't doing too well. I mean, if you call
Yeah.
77 million of underlying profits not doing too well,
Well, that's the thing. It depends what you're using to measure it, right? Like you look at the revenue, you look at the EBITDA, you look at the growth, and you think, oh yeah, it's not bad. But unfortunately, stock markets don't seem to agree.
they did not agree. So what happened to our friends at Appen, who we met last time in San Francisco 2.5 years ago?
True, true. Well, so they recently released their annual results for 2021, as a lot of people have done recently. So that was on the 24th of February, so about a week ago. Like I said, they posted revenue of 447 million US dollars, which was actually an 8% increase over 2020. So pretty solid growth. And underlying EBITDA was 77.7 US dollars, million US dollars as well. Um, but yeah, the shares. I mean, and this is not sort of limited to right now. They've had a bit of a difficult run on the ASX where they're traded for the past year or so. But yeah, the shares on the news of the annual results fell about 28% initially. They then inched up a little bit a day later. They recovered a bit more the next few days, but they still haven't fully recovered to the levels of before the announcement.
Let me just give you just some perspective. They're actually
Yeah.
down 80% from peak. 80.
So the peak was August. I
Yeah.
looked at this as well. Peak was August 2020, where
Yeah.
their shares were trading at 40 AUD, so Australian dollars, and they're currently trading at 7, just above 7 AUD. Their market cap is currently $673 million. So yeah, quite obviously significantly down on the highs of 2020, which seems strange to be talking about anything being kind of a high in 2020, given that we
True.
were in the midst of the worst of the pandemic. But yeah, it's an interesting. I think it's a shame for Appen, but it also throws up a couple of questions that we kind of tackled or posed, I suppose, in the article covering this news. So, I mean, just thinking about Appen's turbulent time with the market, I mean, is it that generally the market has less confidence in the kind of longevity or the success of the data for AI market or demand generally there, or are these hiccups that Appen are seeing specific to them? Appen's the incumbent. They've been operating 25 years in the market for data for AI. And obviously, as we know, there's a lot of new competition. The playing field has been definitely heating up with competition the past sort of 5 years and even more recently the past sort of 1 to 2 years as well, with everyone from LSPs to tech startups, etc., being quite interested in the space. So I think it'll be interesting to watch. Also, other people in the space.
I think it's I mean, as always, it's probably a mix of both that
Yeah.
big techs, probably diversifying. Maybe there were some, I mean, we had these stories around like some of the problems with the data labeling, like 18, that might have even been pre-pandemic when they,
Uh-huh.
you had like the actual what was it, like audio samples being transcribed or flagged
Mm.
by people so that we're listening, and so there were some privacy concerns, etc. I think those were addressed. But I mean, yeah, it can't, if you've been the incumbent in something like this for years and years, and then people are waking up to it,
Mm.
and you have, the likes of Lionbridge AI, which is now part of TELUS, of course, a big other company, and TransPerfect, etc., starting to chase you, and all these, Sumalingua, everyone else just, basically smelling the coffee and getting into that
Mm.
market. That's going to hurt unless the market continues to grow at the same clip, which it probably doesn't. So
I mean, it could also be a bit sort of demystifying in the sense that maybe nobody knew quite what Appen was doing previously, and now that it seems like there's more people doing somewhat of the same thing, the kind of myth or is that the right word? Sort of mysticism around what exactly is it is kind of been lifted.
I think that's a fantastic point. I do think so. And I mean, of course, investors, some of them are informed, others are maybe just more a bit kind of trend followers, etc. So
Mm.
they probably saw this and thought, well, this could scale quite quickly, and now it's still a fantastic business, generating
Mm.
almost $80 million in EBITDA, but it's not where it was in terms of the kind of the forward looking, of course. And they also rejected to provide guidance, which investors hate. So
Mm.
they basically said, we're not going to provide quarterly guidance anymore, and investors always hate that. So it's uncertainty. Just briefly moving on to the world of sub subtitling and captioning. We spoke about that company many times before because, again, they're public and they give us all these lovely figures to discuss. So AI Media, I
Yeah.
think we did speak about that particular set of results, but they published in more detail now. Is there anything that we can add to our prior
I think I just
discussion?
kind of put it there as like Appen, you're not alone type thing.
Got it. Okay.
As well. So despite sort of a pretty good set of results from AI Media, and the shares did climb on the day of the announcement from AI Media, but again, their shares also in Australia are down about 16% from the start of the year. But generally, yeah, pretty positive set of results. I think we covered that, discussed that previously, but they have now issued guidance for full year revenue, which is quite good. So AI Media is saying that they're now expecting full year revenue to be in the region of 60 to 62 million Australian dollars, or around 44 million US dollars. And that would, up from, I think, 35 million in 2021. They're also saying, gross margins are improving, and they expect a positive EBITDA for the full year, which would, I think, be the first time that AI Media reports positive EBITDA on a full year basis since their IPO. So best of luck to them, and yeah, hoping shares recover also.
And so, are they hiring? They're probably hiring. So, yeah, terrible segue. Let's look at the jobs index, which just came out.
Yeah. Yeah, so we just published a job index for March 2022. A better increase, a more significant increase than we saw in February. So the job index climbed by more than 3 points in March to 176.6. So it's not quite at an all-time high. The all-time high came in December 2021 when it peaked at 180.5, but it's not far off. So we would expect it maybe to reach new highs in the next few months, depending on how things go. But generally, very active, as we've seen at Slater, with things like sets of financial results coming out. Obviously, the LSPI is always a great indicator for how companies are doing. We monitor a lot of different platforms for hiring and job ads and things like that, not least our own Lock Jobs, where you had sort of 20 new job postings in the month of February from companies in the core of the language industry, which is great. Obviously, sort of anecdotally, M&A and funding as active, if not more so than ever.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see that a lot of some more companies are now posting on Lock Jobs. It's quite automated process, but we're sharing it through all of the Slater channels as well, right? So if you post your job there, we're gonna tweet it out and post it on LinkedIn to our, I don't know, what is it now, 24,000 followers. So we had Supertext, Locaria, Morningside, T-Works posted vacancies, across all the roles: translation, sales, project management, marketing, etc. I mean, there was this rush like mid last year where everybody posted like technical roles, but I think now we're seeing a lot more kind of translation project manager,
Mm,
linguists, things like that.
sales as
Yeah,
well.
sales as well. Yeah, as always, as always. Yeah, great. So let's head over to Brigham Tomko of Immersion and talk about language learning. Very different topic. Stay tuned. And welcome back, everyone. We're really happy to have Brigham Tomko join us today. Brigham is the CEO of Immersion, a SaaS language education technology company. Hey, Brigham.
Hey, nice to be here today, Florian.
Thanks for joining us, Brigham.
Thanks so much for joining us. Where in the world does this podcast find you?
I'm in Utah today, Lehi, Utah. We call it Silicon Slopes here. It's our version of Silicon Valley here in Utah.
Silicon Slopes. I hope there's snow on the slopes as well.
There's great snow finally after about a month of no snow.
All right. So, Brigham, tell us in a nutshell, what's Immersion? Give us the kind of extended elevator pitch to set the scene, because most of our listeners come from the kind of LSP and localization buyer side, and we typically haven't really very actively covered language education, language learning. So, really interested to learn more.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, Immersion certifies language ability of job seekers, employees, and learners. We've developed an AI adaptive assessment engine that allows us to assess people's speaking ability as well as other skills in language in about 10 to 15 minutes. And the real breakthrough is we can give immediate results. Like as soon as the assessment's done, you have the score reports and are able to make decisions, whether it's placing a student in a course, whether it's does this interpreter or translator have the ability to work in this language, or does this call center rep, can they do call center work in English or Mandarin or whatever language? We initially started in English, but we've expanded and have Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, Italian. Then we've expanded into some of the Asian languages and released Tagalog, Japanese, Mandarin, and we now have Korean and Russian under development. And again, we've been able to shorten the process and the accuracy to certify someone's language ability for those different use cases.
Gotta say, it's a very smooth process. He sent me a link ahead of the podcast, and I took a test. And I'm not going to share the results. I did the Spanish test, and it was a rude awakening for me. But
Yeah.
I felt I had this language down, but I've lost so much. I forgot so much. Anyway, it's very, very smooth. As you said, I think it took me about 15 minutes. I did the written one. So, and I'm going to do probably the Chinese, the one with the voice. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the key to that process is keeping it short and simple so that people can take it anytime, anywhere.
And what about your own professional background then? You've got extensive experience in in business. How did you come to decide to found a language education company of all things?
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting process. I joke with my friends sometimes that I'm a little bit of an overeducated entrepreneur. Yeah, I studied accounting and then I got my law degree and got my MBA, and I started two venture-backed companies during my law degree and MBA, and one of them was an education technology business. It was actually one of the first online high schools ever created, and it still exists. And I was always interested in education, but as right out of high school, I actually went and lived in Thailand and was a missionary and became fluent in that language. I'd studied Spanish in high school and I used that in my work. And so early on, language was something important. And so as I left some of those early entrepreneurial opportunities, I managed a large investment fund, about $1 billion, and we have investments throughout the world. And as I looked for the next stage of my career, I knew I wanted to do something international. I loved languages, I loved culture and people, and I founded a business in the Philippines where we did offshore staff leasing. We built teams for companies all throughout the world, primarily focused on digital marketing and then in the later years in software development. And a lot of the initial pains that I felt that in that business and evaluating English as a second language, people are what led to immersion. So we had a particular experience where I had about 40 employees. It was early on. I only had 2 recruiters, and I had a client come to me and said, I need 500 English speaking call reps and I need them placed within 3 months. And so we had to screen like 5,000 applicants with 2 recruiters who didn't speak English as a first language. And I remember I was sitting, this was about a decade ago. There's got to be a better way, to assess language ability of job applicants, because there really wasn't any automated and price conscious options at the time. And that was really sort of the seed of my side of the business. And then my co-founder, Jacob Burtis, the AI technology that we have in our patents was really his dissertation research. He had been running a language learning school that trained about 30,000 people a year in 60 different languages. And he was having trouble assessing their speaking ability. So we kind of commiserated and said, hey, I have this problem in business. He had that problem in education, and we came together, and developed immersion to solve that problem.
It's super interesting as a backstory as well.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the key milestones and challenges that you've faced along the way since founding the company? And right now, where are you at in terms of the leadership team and the size of the business?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting over time. We have about 750 customers now, so it's grown dramatically. About 600 universities use us, and about 150 large multinational corporations. But the business has definitely evolved. We actually even started as we did a lot of language tutoring at the beginning, and a lot of our customers continued to ask for assessment. And so that's when we really started building our assessment technology. And as you're building software and technology, you start with, especially an assessment. We first created an assessment that worked, but then we needed an assessment platform for admin and be able to integrate with platforms. And so that's really where things have evolved, is from a single test to what we call, our assessment engine that allows us to create other languages and deliver data and let our customers manage that data. Because some of our customers have over 3 million applicants a year, and so you have to be able to organize that data. So it's both the front end and back end. Our team is mostly from on the engineering side, from large ed tech businesses. A lot of people are passionate about what we do because we feel like we're helping people gain opportunity by proving their ability to use a language, whether it's to get more education or to get a job. And as we've grown, we've recruited out of other SaaS technology startups, but again, primarily education and HR tech type companies are the people that have been attracted to what we do.
How hard is it to add a language? And like, how do you make the selection of languages? I mean, you mentioned before Tagalog, Chinese, you got the kind of the figs, like the French, Italian, German,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah. How hard is it to add? And then how do you do the language selection?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll answer the first question first. Supply and demand. So English is first. It's kind of more broad as a language of business and for the ability to access education. A lot of our early traction as a business was in Latin America. So Spanish and Portuguese were added pretty quickly, and then French is another global business. And what drives the growth of those other languages is usually customer demand. So if we have large customers and multiple of them need a certain language, then we'll proceed forward with those. Tagalog is probably the most random one out of the list. We had 2 large customers, one a large education institution, and another one that was a large BPO actually had a big need for Tagalog. And I think 3 of our management team members speak Tagalog as well. So there's customers that had it, but we also had a unique skill set and background to be able to do that. But one of the things, as I mentioned, as we evolved as a business, we developed the first language, But as we developed our platform, we specifically did it in mind knowing that we'd want to develop other languages. So a lot of the way the test is done, um, the general way that the algorithms and scoring works is the same across languages. And we kind of have a dialed in process of what's the minimum number of items or questions we need to start the test? How many people do we need to calibrate it? How do we remove bias by getting people of different age, gender, what's their base language? And so it is a lot of work if you did it from scratch, but we sort of built the platform in a way that as much as we can, we had a process. I think one of the hardest things is going from the traditional Romance languages to
Mm.
the Asian tonal and character languages. And we actually did Japanese first because we had a lot of skill set within the company. And once we were able to figure out Japanese, Mandarin, and Korean were much easier after that because we kind of figured out some of the nuances of using those languages.
And now Thai. You have to add Thai.
It'll be soon. The problem is I'm the only one that wants Thai right now. I need a customer that needs Thai, and then we'll add it on there.
My co-founder Andrew Smart, he's based in Thailand. He should probably learn Thai and then take the test.
Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
it's a good one. Sometimes, Florian, like you mentioned, you almost don't want to know how you do on the test, but it does help you know what you need to work on.
Yeah. It was again, as I said, a rude awakening. So on the kind of translation side, often when you talk to people that are not so kind of involved, of course, in the industry, they'd be like, "Well, isn't machine translation going to kind of do away with the entire business here?" Do you ever get the question on the language learning side that people are saying, "Well, with all this kind of fancy AI technology, machine translation, speech to speech, etc., like why is there a need to learn a language in the first place?" Do
Yeah.
you ever get that question or?
Yeah, we definitely do because similar to the AI technology that's coming out in the translation interpretation space, in call center and customer support that our customers do, chatbots have really become much more prevalent. And, people say, at some point our chatbots just going to replace the human. The answer is it probably will replace in some low level capabilities, similar to the way that I think machine translation will replace a lot of the basics. Then you get to an area where the machine translation isn't accurate, and it has to be absolutely accurate in areas of like legal and healthcare and these other areas. There's often still an overlay of human review and involvement, and then I think particularly in what we do, um, you know, interacting within the office in that language is important. Not just that we have these chatbots to do it. So there's always going to be that, but then the human empathy that needs to be involved with jobs that require language ability. So the answer is yes. I think some of the low level things will uh, be replaced, but I view AI and technology as a way to enhance the human component of what we do so we can remove the basic things so that the highly trained, highly paid people can focus on more important and high level activities. So I kind of view it as AI as human augmentation as opposed to human replacement in a lot of these um, overall processes, at least.
And how does what you do kind of interact with maybe some more of the I don't know whether to say traditional or standardized sort of certification certifications that might exist. So I remember I actually was working for a university admissions department for a
Yeah,
couple of years when before I got started properly. It was all to do with what IELTS score do you have, so
yeah.
and what kind of formal qualifications do you have. How does that tie in with the solution that you're providing at Immersion?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we would call those assessments high stakes. The TOEFL,
Mhm.
IELTS, TOEIC. You have a handful of those. Our score report, we actually give you a cross walk to those tests. Right now, we're not trying to replace those, but if someone is preparing for an IELTS or TOEFL or others, you could take our assessment and get an idea of where you're at, and it's much cheaper and much quicker to do that. Um, I won't say that competing with those isn't in our future, but it's definitely not in our 1 to 2 year roadmap. But with 600 universities using us in their language courses for placement and progress, we're getting tons of data. And what's really going to set you apart in AI is data and the trust that these organizations have. And so I imagine as language departments trust us, that admissions departments will, trust us as well down the road as we choose to focus there. But again, primarily right now, our goal on that side is to help people know how they're progressing towards their IELTS and TOEIC. We do have a few universities that use our assessment as the entrance exam, but that was by their choice, not by us, intentionally marketing it that direction right now. But if as you have something that's accurate, it's much more inexpensive for students and much faster for students, and then immediate results, I think it's naturally going to enter that market where you've seen companies like Duolingo start to take on TOEFL on their English entrance exam.
And who else would you say makes up the kind of key client segments for immersion? So you've got universities, I think you mentioned
Yeah,
call centers. Who are you
yeah,
targeting?
yeah, definitely. So I think there's categories. Call center and BPO would be a subset of what we call pre-employment screening. So anywhere where large organizations need to assess language ability. We have language companies. So we have a lot of language learning companies that either resell our assessment to their students or use them for placement of progress. There's academia, and then we also work with language service providers, kind of in a couple of different ways. One is to they use us for recruiting and hiring their translators and interpreters, particularly interpreters where you need to know their ability in their L1 and L2, both languages that they're working in. They can assess them on both sides. And then companies use us for promotion, so they'll regularly assess their employees because certain sales jobs or outward facing jobs will require better language or communication skills. And then finally, we have a variety of our partners, both language companies and LSPs, resell us to their customers because, as an LSP, most of their customers view them as the experts on all things language. So if they have a problem with anything language, they say, "Hey, how do we solve this?" And we're starting to have more and more LSPs add this to their toolbox. So when customers ask them about assessing language ability, they have a tool they can offer either directly through us or through a white label type arrangement.
Was that on your, like, not roadmap, but did you see this, that you were going to work with LSPs, kind of translation companies, when you started this? Or was that just kind of, okay, well, there was this one company that came that had a need, and oh, okay, there's all these others out there.
Yeah, definitely the latter. We actually initially started at the very beginning working with what we call intensive English programs. So schools around the world who were specific around teaching and learning English. But as um, we actually had a few LSPs whose customers were asking them, how do we evaluate the language ability of our call center employees or our hospital staff? And so they came to us and, for that solution. And so it started with, a couple of companies in the industry like a Corby and Searcom, and then kind of just grew from there because
Hmm.
once the need was known, we went and kind of shared that need, and it was sort of a universal, pain or, than a lot of these LSPs had.
Thinking about the technology that you use, I think we saw a couple of products, named products that you offer. So you've got the True North speaking test, I think, is one, and
Yeah,
WebCape is another.
yeah,
I mean, can you tell us a bit about, as much as you can, the
yeah.
underlying technology, and also any? I think you mentioned a couple of patented solutions. Also, how does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. So True North overall is our speaking assessment scale, and our methodology for assessing speaking. CAPE stands for Computer Adaptive Placement Exam. So WebCape is our particular product for academia for placement into those courses. Um, Yeah, and it's interesting. Our real breakthrough has been in automating speaking assessment scoring and doing it accurately. A lot of what was out there was essentially taking speech and running it through a speech recognition engine, like a Watson or a Google, and just getting pronunciation feedback, because that's basically what the data that those systems give you. But pronunciation isn't fluency, and
Mm.
isn't an ability score. And so we actually do use pretty standard front end speech recognition engines. And in many ways, it's commodity for us on the very front end. We get our initial data either from like an IBM Watson or a Google Voice, depending which platform has a better model for the language that we're working in. And then our algorithms come after that. So without going into what the actual algorithms are, each question or item is calibrated um, based on language ability as well as grammar and other principles. So from each question we ask, we get a lot of data, a lot more than just pronunciation. We know that that question or item is at a certain level on the scale, so that if you perform to a certain level, it's inferred that you can perform there. But it also tests different grammar principles in that process as well. And kind of the overall process we use for most of our speaking assessments is called elicit and imitation. I won't get too deep into that, but it's basically listen and repeat. But we're able to get the data through our AI models using that system.
Wow, that's you said that pronunciation isn't fluency, but I guess for Chinese, it's like it's it's a lot there is early on, right? You gotta get
Yeah,
the pronunciation right, otherwise nothing works.
yeah.
So I will
But
take the Chinese test. I procrastinated. I did the Spanish one, and then I'm like, no, no, I'm not gonna hurt myself by doing the
yeah,
Chinese, but I will do it.
yeah. But you are absolutely right.
Okay.
Pronunciation is a component. It's just not the only one. So
Yeah.
if you think about work in the workplace, intelligibility is what you're going for. If my Mandarin accent is different than your Mandarin accent and is different from Esther's, but the people in Mandarin can still understand us, then we should all be able to get that job and work that job. So that's kind of one of
Okay.
the really important things in language bias with AI you know, is that accent in certain languages or certain, L1s, your primary language, have heavier accents going to different languages. We've chosen to kind of leave the aperture really wide on pronunciation so that we focus on intelligibility. If the model can understand you, then you should be able to do the job, or you can go to that school and perform in those courses.
Yeah. For pricing, and the kind of business model, like, it seems like right now it's very much kind of enterprise sale, kind of in bulk, right? Is that true? And are there any plans to go maybe more kind of B2C, almost like, you know, SaaS or whatever,
Yeah.
or selling those tests like on a test by test basis on like by the internet?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's kind of an evolution that we're part of. As we started the company, we sold tests in bulk batches. I want 100 assessments. Well, if you buy 100, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than 10, per test, and that's how we started. As we've evolved, we've tried to move a little bit more to a SaaS model where it's a subscription, either for monthly or annual based on volume. We've really focused on B2B. I think for us, it was important to have credibility. So, with academia, we get a lot of credibility, and now with the large organizations we're with. But naturally, we've started having learners, individual learners, and people interested in our tests. So, our first foray into a consumer model is what I call B2B2C, meaning we have language companies who have consumers who use them and now resell directly to the consumer. You could technically find a way to buy a single test on our website. It's just not the promoted primary path through there. But I think for me, I look at our long term play. If companies are using us and universities are using us, individuals or consumers are going to want to be using our test and practicing because that's what's going to help them get those jobs and get those in the future. So I would imagine the next couple of years we'll have a division that focuses on B2B and as well as B2C.
What's the impact from COVID been, if any? I mean, we've spoken a lot about sort of remote hiring trends, just general remote trends in the industry, but has there been any sort of accelerated demand as a result of COVID?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the whole industry with translation and interpretation has been riding this wave of globalization, meaning of workforce and customers of even small companies are now very global. And so, there were solutions for large companies, but all these small businesses have to figure this out as well. And then the digital transformation from COVID to me only increased the globalization trend that was already happening. So you had
Hmm.
the big wave, you added this other wave of needing to be able to work remote. But I think really what it did is it just broke through barriers. If I talk to a lot of people and say, hey, would you ever have hired this position remote 2 years ago? Like we would have never thought of doing that. Would you hire an executive that you'd never met face to face? No way. And now we all do it every day. I mean, half my company has never worked from our home office now, or even been to the home office. So I think what COVID did is broke through a lot of those barriers. And so the answer to your initial question, yes, for sure, because um, we're willing to hire people in positions we were never willing to hire before. And when you make a job posting for a software engineer, it isn't, in the UK or Switzerland or even in London or Geneva. I don't care where you're at in the world. If you can speak the language I need you to do and you can perform the job, then you can have it. And so we feel like our ability to get in there and certify the language ability of all these really opens up the world so then they can focus on the other skills that are required for the job.
So tell us what's on your plate roadmap, priority list over the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What are the top initiatives there?
Yeah, so over that kind of time frame, there's a few interesting. We'll continue to expand languages to get more and more coverage. I think with the languages we cover 95 or 98% of the business need, but we'll continue to expand there. Integrations is key. So data is great, but if it isn't at your fingertips in the systems that you're already using, that's important. So having our data drop into more systems. And then the final one is, in our assessments, we have the ability to deliver subscores based on the different capabilities uh, within language that we can deliver just from a single speaking assessment. So finding ways to deliver more data in a shorter period of time for these language assessments will be key to us as we continue to evolve.
Great. Brigham, was fantastic having you on the podcast. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Good to be with
All
you
right.
guys today.